The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long shadows across the dusty street where Armin's mechanic shop sat. The corrugated shutters rattled as he pulled them down, and the sharp smell of gasoline lingered in the air. His hands were raw from a day of endless work, changing brake pads, fixing clutches, welding mufflers. At 32, his life had settled into a routine of hard labor and simple joys. Yet when he thought of Alia, his 6-year-old daughter, waiting for him at home, every ache in his body softened. She was his reason for everything, his reason for getting up at dawn, his reason for staying on his feet even when exhaustion screamed at him. Just as he slid the padlock onto the shutters, a violent noise shattered the calm of the evening. First came the screech of tires, then a hollow thud followed by the metallic crunch of twisting steel. Birds scattered from the telephone wires above as silence briefly hung in the air before smoke began curling into the sky. Armin's heart leapt. Without thinking, he dropped his tools and sprinted toward the sound. His boots pounded the asphalt, his chest tightening as adrenaline surged. At the corner of the road, a silver sedan lay skewed at an awkward angle, its front bumper crushed against a street pole. The driver's side window was half shattered, smoke puffing from under the hood. Inside, a woman sat frozen, both hands gripping the steering wheel. Her face was pale, framed by dark hair that spilled across her shoulders. A thin line of blood trickled from her forehead. "Miss, can you hear me?" Armin called, forcing open the dented door. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed. I think so," she whispered. "Don't move too quickly," Armin warned. His voice was firm but gentle. He reached in, unbuckled her seat belt, and slid an arm around her shoulders to help her out. When her knees gave way, he steadied her, holding her weight against him. She was lighter than he expected, fragile even. "Sit down here," he urged, guiding her to a bench outside his garage. She winced as she touched her forehead, her eyes still clouded with shock. "My head. It hurts. But I'll be okay. Please, don't call an ambulance." Armin froze mid-dial. "What do you mean don't? You're injured." Her eyes widened, almost pleading. "No hospitals. Please. It's just a cut. I'll be fine." Her desperation puzzled him. Most people would beg for medical attention after an accident, but she seemed terrified at the thought. He studied her for a moment, then sighed and put away his phone. "All right, but I'm not letting you sit there bleeding." He hurried inside the shop and returned with a battered first aid kit. His rough, grease-stained fingers moved with surprising tenderness as he cleaned the wound. He soaked a cloth in antiseptic, dabbing gently despite her flinches. "You've done this before," she murmured, watching him. Armin gave a small, crooked smile. "When you've got a daughter who insists on climbing trees and falling off bicycles, you learn a thing or two." The corners of her lips twitched as if she wanted to smile, but it faded quickly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't even know me." Armin shrugged, taping the bandage carefully. "I don't need to. You were in trouble, and I was here." He stood, wiping his hands on a rag, and turned to the car. The hood was buckled, steam still hissing out. He leaned down, squinting at the damage. "Your radiator's cracked, the front axle's bent, and the bumper's gone. It'll take time, but I can fix it." The woman blinked at him, startled. "You'd do that, just like that?" "Of course." He shot her a look, half amused, half serious. "What kind of mechanic would I be if I let a lady's car sit there dying in front of my shop?" She gave a soft laugh, the first sound of relief since the crash. "I'm Sarah," she said after a pause. "Just Sarah." Armin nodded. "Nice to meet you, Sarah." "I'm Armin." But as he picked up his tools and got to work, he couldn't shake the feeling there was more to her than she let on. Her clothes, elegant but practical, spoke of wealth. Her shoes, though scuffed from the accident, were designer. And the way she flinched at the mention of hospitals hinted at secrets she wasn't ready to share. Still, he respected her silence. Everyone carried burdens, and it wasn't his place to dig. As the sky darkened into indigo, Armin worked beneath the flickering garage light. He dismantled the radiator, his hands black with oil, while Sarah sat quietly nearby. From time to time, she stole glances at him, at the sweat dripping from his brow, the firm set of his jaw, the way his entire being focused on repairing something broken. It struck her how odd this moment was. Just hours earlier, She had been in a boardroom, negotiating million-dollar deals. She was always in control, always surrounded by people who either wanted her approval or her money. And yet, here she was, bandaged by a stranger, her car being mended not because of her influence, but because he simply chose to help. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly, her voice low but cutting through the hum of tools. Armin didn't look up. "Because someone has to. And because I'd hope, if my little girl ever needed help, a stranger would do the same for her." The sincerity in his voice made something twist inside Sarah's chest. She looked away, hiding the sudden sting of tears. Later, as the night grew colder, Armin draped his old jacket over her shoulders without a word. She pulled it tighter, inhaling the faint scent of engine oil and soap. Somehow, it felt safer than any luxury she had ever known. By the time the clock struck midnight, Armin finally straightened, stretching his sore back. "That's enough for tonight. I'll finish the rest tomorrow. You can leave your car here, it's safe." Sarah hesitated. "And me?" He gestured toward the small wooden chair inside the garage office. "You can rest there if you'd like. It's not much, but it's warm." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a quiet nod, she stepped inside, clutching his jacket around her. As Armin locked up for the night, he glanced at her through the office window. She was leaning back in the chair, eyes closed, looking both vulnerable and strangely peaceful. And though he knew nothing about who she really was, he felt an inexplicable certainty. This night was only the beginning of something much larger than either of them could imagine. The morning sun filtered through the dusty window panes of Armin's shop, casting golden streaks across toolboxes and oil cans. The scent of strong chai brewed on a small burner filled the air, mixing with the faint metallic tang of engine grease. Armin was already at work beneath the hood of the silver sedan, his brow furrowed in concentration. Sparks flew briefly as he tightened a loose joint. His arms ached, but he welcomed the ache. It meant progress, and progress meant this woman, Sarah, could be on her way soon. A small, cheerful voice rang out from the street. "Daddy." Armin looked up just in time to see Alia burst into the garage, her school bag bouncing on her tiny shoulders. Her hair, tied into two uneven ponytails, swayed as she ran toward him. "You're early," Armin said with a grin, wiping his hands before scooping her into a hug. "I told my teacher I wanted to help Daddy at work today," Alia declared proudly. She spotted the woman sitting quietly on a stool nearby, her bandaged forehead making her look fragile despite her composed posture. "Oh, who's this?" Before Armin could answer, Sarah bent slightly forward, her voice soft and warm. "Hello, sweetheart. You must be Alia." Alia studied her with wide, curious eyes. "And you must be the lady Daddy helped last night." Sarah chuckled, a genuine sound that seemed to lighten the air. "Yes, that would be me. Are you okay now?" Alia asked with childlike bluntness. "I'm better, thanks to your father," Sarah replied, glancing at Armin. The way she looked at him was different now, not just gratitude, but something more searching, more personal. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself drawn into the rhythm of the shop. She sat with Alia on a crate, listening as the girl animatedly described her favorite fairy tale characters and her dream of becoming a car doctor like Daddy. Sarah laughed more that morning than she had in months, her heart softening with each innocent giggle. Meanwhile, Armin worked with steady determination. He was used to long hours, but today felt different. Whenever he glanced over and saw Sarah with Alia, he caught himself staring longer than he should. There was a warmth in the sight, a woman and his daughter together, that stirred something deep inside him. Something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since his wife passed away. By noon, the car was nearly finished. Armin closed the hood with a satisfied thud and wiped his hands on a rag. "She'll drive smooth again. Just be more careful, all right." Sarah rose, brushing invisible dust from her clothes. Her movements carried a grace that didn't belong to someone ordinary, but Armin had grown used to not prying. He had learned to respect silence. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "No payment necessary, just drive safe." But instead of relief, Sarah looked startled. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, thick with cash. "Please, you must take this." Armin frowned. "I said no. I don't want your money." Her hand froze mid-air. Nobody had ever refused her before. People scrambled for her approval, her wealth. Even in her personal life, friendships and relationships had often been tainted by the same pattern: what she could give, what she could buy. But here was a man who had fixed her wounds and repaired her car, yet turned away the moment money appeared. Sarah's throat tightened. She placed the envelope back in her bag, her fingers trembling. "You don't understand. I'm not just..." She stopped, biting her lip. Armin tilted his head. "Not just what?" For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The sound of Alia humming to herself in the background was the only thing grounding Sarah's racing heart. Finally, she inhaled deeply, as if shedding years of pretense. "My name isn't just Sarah," she confessed. "I'm Sarah Khalid." The name hung in the air. Even Alia paused, though she didn't know its weight. Armin blinked, recognition dawning slowly. He had seen the name in newspapers, on billboards, the CEO of Khalid Motors, one of the largest automobile corporations in the country. But his expression didn't change much. He only shrugged, as though she had told him her favorite color. "You're the CEO," he said simply. "Yes," Sarah whispered, suddenly unsure of herself. "And that's why I didn't want to go to the hospital. Reporters would swarm, shareholders would panic. My life is always under a microscope." Armin crossed his arms, studying her. "And yet, here you are in a dusty garage with a mechanic who refused your money." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "That's exactly why. Because last night, for the first time in years, someone looked at me and didn't see a CEO. Didn't see money. Just saw a woman who needed help." Armin exhaled slowly, his gaze softening. "Sarah Khalid or just Sarah, it doesn't matter. You were hurt. I did what anyone should have done." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not anyone. People don't treat me like that anymore." Her eyes glistened as she looked at him. "You treated me like a human being." At that moment, Alia ran over, tugging her father's sleeve. "Daddy, can she come to dinner? Please." Sarah laughed through her tears, a sound so unguarded it startled even her. She hadn't been invited to a meal without formality, without strings attached, in years. Armin hesitated, but seeing the pleading look on both their faces, he gave a small nod. "All right, dinner it is. That evening, Sarah found herself in a modest kitchen that smelled of spices and home. The walls were faded, the furniture simple, but the warmth in the air was richer than any luxury apartment she had ever known. Armin cooked while Alia set the table with mismatched plates. Sarah offered to help, but Armin only shook his head. "You're our guest." As they ate, Sarah listened to Alia chatter about her school, her dreams, her favorite cartoons. Armin listened patiently, occasionally correcting her grammar or chuckling at her wild imagination. The bond between father and daughter was palpable, and it tugged at something deep inside Sarah. She realized she wasn't thinking about board meetings, stock prices, or corporate rivals. For once, she was just present. After dinner, as Alia fell asleep on the couch clutching her stuffed bear, Sarah stood quietly by the window. Armin joined her, arms folded. "You're different from anyone I've met," she admitted. "And you're not what I expected a CEO to be," he replied with a half smile. Their eyes met, the silence between them heavy but not uncomfortable. For the first time in years, Sarah felt seen, not as a leader, not as a symbol of wealth, but simply as a woman. Armin didn't say it, but he felt it too. This woman, who had stumbled into his life by accident, had brought something he hadn't realized he missed: companionship. The truth had been revealed, and though they came from two different worlds, something unspoken had begun to bloom, something neither of them had planned for, but both desperately needed. That night, as Sarah prepared to leave, Alia stirred in her sleep and murmured, "Good night, Mama." Sarah froze, her heart hammering. Armin's eyes widened, but he didn't correct the child. Because deep down, in the quietest part of his soul, he wondered if fate had just repaired something far greater than a broken car.